Hi, I'm Bill Wiadrowski from LifeWise Pet Nutrition, and today I want to answer that very vexing question: is how much food do I feed my dog and why does it vary so much? Well, it's a pretty heavy question because there's a lot to it, so we're actually going to provide the answers in two parts. And in this part one, we're going to look at the actual structure of the diet and how that affects the dog, and in the second part of this video series, we're going to look at what actually happens in practice. So to start with, when we make a particular food, we're targeting that food to a specific physiological stage of the dog. Now, that might be puppy stage, or it might be active adult, it might be aging adult, it might be geriatric. But in broad terms, we're targeting the diets specifically in that manner. But with any group, we look at the population of dogs that inhabit that group, and we then look at their requirements and put that on a graph. We're going to get a graph that looks something like this. We're going to fundamentally get a standard Bell deviation curve. And what this curve tells us is that the majority of dogs fit here in the middle. But on this side, we've got some dogs where the nutrient density requirements for nutrients is lower, whereas we've got some dogs over here where the requirement for nutrients is higher. So what we're doing in terms of our diet design is that we're basically catering for, in any one food, 80% of the dogs that fit into this middle category here. And that means that over here and over this side, we've got 5% of the dogs that aren't quite catered for, and then we've got another 5% down here that aren't catered for very well at all. And similarly over here, we've got 5% that it's not quite enough, and we've got another 5% of which it's decidedly not enough nutrients, because that's what they require over there. So whilst the 80% of the population can be fed quite happily on that one food, we have to make some minor adjustments. These ones here, where they don't need that level of nutrients, they're going to exist quite nicely with maybe a little bit of supplementation. And these ones down here are going to have more supplementation. And typically what we might do in a situation like that is that we might add, say, for these dogs here, where the nutrients are too dense because we've made it here and we want to pull it back to here, we might say add some rice to the food and just dilute it a bit. Similarly, over here, where the dog requires more nutrients than what we've got, we might add something to the food. So we might add some egg, we might add some sardine, might give them a tin of sardines a week, or so often. But whichever way it goes, we can actually, once we've assessed the animal, we can actually modify the diet slightly so that it suits and that brings them back into this 80%. So that's the first contributing factor to the change or in requirement. Another factor that plays a big role in how much food the dog needs is going to be the environment. Is the dog exposed to summer temperatures? Is it exposed to winter cold temperatures? Typically, we see in summertime, dogs' appetite is suppressed by about 15% due to temperature. And in wintertime, the opposite happens and appetite increases by about 50% to normal. So that means that we'll get a 30% variation between the middle of winter and the middle of summer. So if your dog is outside enjoying the weather or enjoying the cold, obviously there's going to be a big difference in the amount of food he needs to either keep warm or not keep warm in the summertime. So that's going to change things a lot. But thirdly, and most importantly, what really makes the difference as to how much food the dog eats is to do with the actual structure of the diet. Now here at LifeWise, what we do, we put the diets together by virtue of ingredient ratios and nutrient ratios. And all of this is designed to maximize the efficiency of use of the food within the body. Firstly, by promoting a healthy gut microbiome, and secondly, by satisfying the actual nutrient requirements to meet the genetic needs of the dog. Now, feeding the microbiome, we refer to that as functional nutrition, whereas feeding the nutrients for the dog's genetic needs, we refer to that as genetic nutrition. And when we get functional nutrition and genetic nutrition aligned in the one food, but what we find is the amount of food consumed or required by the dog diminishes markedly. If these ratios that we use are not in keeping with the physiological age of the dog, obviously the dog can't process the food as efficiently as it's capable, and that means that we're going to use more food. So this efficiency of use based on diet design is probably the major contributing factor to determining how much food a dog is going to need. So that's the first part of this story. The second part of the story goes a little bit further, and we'll get into that in part 2 of this video series. So see you soon.